So, raise your hand if the New South Wales ICAC findings actually surprised you. Anyone? Anyone? I hazard a guess that anyone that followed the investigation closely enough knew where this was all heading. I mean, there were really no surprises for me in the ICAC findings. And you'd have to think that Gladys herself knew the writing was on the wall way back when she handed in her resignation.
It pains me to announce that I have no option but to resign from the office of Premier.
And this is one of the benefits of public hearings. There really aren't that many surprises when the findings are eventually released. There's also something to be said about sunlight being the best remedy for corruption or something like that. This video is not about what the New South Wales ICAC found. There's been plenty of coverage on that. No, this video is about how this report and the findings highlights the differences and flaws between the Victorian IBAC and the New South Wales ICAC. It's a statement of fact that the New South Wales ICAC and the Victorian IBAC have some key fundamental differences. They're not identical. The first major difference is that, as the Age point out, corruption or corrupt conduct literally means something different in Victoria than it does in New South Wales. At least insofar as how the relevant integrity agencies define it anyway. While it may take 4 pages for the Victorian IBAC Act to define corrupt conduct, the definition itself is actually quite narrow, and it takes just 7 words to ensure that the Victorian bar for corrupt conduct is set so high that grey corruption appears to be allowed to flourish in that state. And those 7 words are conduct that would constitute a relevant offence. This is key to understanding why the Victorian IBAC is considerably weaker than its New South Wales counterpart. Restricting the definition of corrupt conduct to conduct that constitutes a relevant criminal offence leaves the door wide open for all sorts of dodgy and unethical behaviour. For a relatively recent example, you just need to look at the Operation What report in Victoria to see how weak IBAC really is. There was all sorts of behaviour identified within that investigation that was, as the report put it, unethical, inappropriate, and my personal favourite, egregious. While the report may say all that, it's also true to say that in the investigation, IBAC was unable to make a finding of corrupt conduct. This is despite the investigation determining that there were breaches of both the Ministerial Code of Conduct and the MP's Code of Conduct. The Operation Watch report was highly critical of a legislative framework that provides few, if any, consequences for abusing public resources, and that allows such conduct to continue unchecked. It was also critical of the Victorian government and the weaknesses of the Victorian parliamentary integrity model that had firmly positioned Victoria as a laggard in terms of parliamentary integrity. But boil it all down and there was no criminal offence, which means there was no corrupt conduct found in Victoria. The New South Wales ICAC's definition is a much broader one, not constrained by having to meet a relevant criminal offence style clause. In New South Wales, corrupt conduct can include dishonesty, the breach of public trust, or a breach of the New South Wales Ministerial Code of Conduct. Had Operation Watts been investigated under the New South Wales model, what finding do you think ICAC may have made? The criminal offence bar in Victoria also places limitations on whether or not an investigation can even kick off. Former IBAC Commissioner Robert Redlich KC made this very point in 2022.
IBAC's jurisdiction and some other interstate commissions' jurisdiction is confined to investigating conduct only where there are reasonable grounds to suspect that a crime has been committed. The New South Wales ICAC and the Queensland CCC have a much broader capacity to investigate conduct that is not constrained by suspicion that the subject of the complaint is criminal.
So let's go back to Gladys. If you were to look at Operation Keppel through an IBAC lens, then it seems unlikely that an investigation into her actions would have even got off the ground. Even if an investigation had gotten off the ground, it's unlikely IBAC would have found her to have engaged in serious corrupt conduct, or have made a finding of corrupt conduct at all.
How is that even possible?
I'm glad you asked. Well, while through their investigation the New South Wales ICAC found Gladys to have engaged in serious corrupt conduct, they did not find that her conduct was criminal, nor did they refer her for prosecution. Now, had this saga played out in Victoria under IBAC, given Gladys was not found to have engaged in criminal conduct, it doesn't seem it would have been possible for IBAC to have made a corrupt conduct finding against her. Sure, IBAC could have described her behaviour as egregious.
Egregious or something.
But in terms of an actual corruption finding, nah. Technically, Gladys could have brushed it all off as an
educational report
and then carried on about her business. The second major difference between New South Wales, and in this case both Victoria and the federal NAC, is the ability to hold public inquiries. As I said at the start, there were very few, if any, surprises coming out of the New South Wales ICAC's Operation Keppel report, largely because the majority of it played out in public. In New South Wales, ICAC can hold public inquiries if it believes it's in the public interest to do so. A state premier being interviewed as part of a corruption inquiry, well, it's kind of hard to say that there's not a public interest there. In Victoria, the starting position is that examinations should generally be held in private, unless they meet a number of criteria, including an exceptional circumstances clause. Now, off the bat, you might think that something like a premier allegedly being examined as part of an investigation into alleged improper dealings between said premier and a firefighters union may meet the definition of exceptional circumstances. Yeah, nah. The problem here is in the term itself, exceptional circumstances. It's vague, perhaps intentionally so. It acts as a barrier to public hearings as potential subjects can challenge a decision for the hearing to be held in public, delaying the investigation for significant amounts of time through lengthy court challenges. And public hearings are important for a number of reasons. I mean, besides acting as an additional deterrent to dodgy behaviour, as well as helping build public confidence in integrity agencies through exposing their work. They can also assist active inquiries, as the New South Wales ICAC Commissioner points out, where he was quoted in the Sydney Morning Herald as saying, "We've had investigations which have commenced in public, and as a result of that information, other people have come forward and we've been able to go into other areas, which have raised significant issues of corruption." Seems clear there's a lot of value there. If there are criticisms to be levelled at the New South Wales ICAC, it would be the length of time it took for the Operation Keppel report to be released. Sadly though, that's not unusual for integrity bodies. It can happen for any number of reasons. In Victoria, as the former IBAC Commissioner has noted, reports can be tied up in lengthy court shenanigans, meaning it can take years for their release.
There's another inquiry that is widely believed to be underway, and it's never been confirmed or denied. Is there an investigation into the firefighters union?
There was.
Was past tense?
Was. The investigation concluded probably 18 months ago. There's a draft that's being prepared and we wait whilst litigation takes place.
Is that what's called Operation Richmond?
Correct.
Why has that draft report not been made public?
Because there's litigation on a number of fronts. It could still be a very long time before it sees the light of day.
End of the day, New South Wales ICAC is just stronger than Victoria's IBAC. It's really that simple. It will be interesting if New South Wales can maintain that strength, and it's probably worth keeping an eye on whether or not there are changes to ICAC in the future. In terms of the Operation Keppel report, the response from both sides of politics to the findings have been eye-opening. From the Libs, we've had the expected defence pushing the woman wronged story.
In Gladys, I know somebody who is absolutely a wonderful person. She's first class, and what you see in public is what you get in private as well. She's just a very decent person. She chose a bum basically, and he was a bad guy. And I think that she has, paid a big price for that. And her integrity is not in question. She's not a corrupt person. That's not the person that I know, and I think she should hold her head high. She had a bad relationship, as everybody does.
Which really misses the point.
I don't believe for one moment that she's corrupt. I believe very strongly that she's a person of the highest integrity.
And for their part, New South Wales Labor almost issued a bizarre eulogy, which was kind of an eye-opener as well.
Nothing in this report takes away, I don't think, from Premier Berejiklian's handling of the COVID emergency, which I still regard as being excellent. It's important, however, for all politicians in New South Wales and anyone in public life or positions of leadership to understand that we must manage conflicts of interest and in particular declare them.
While in my view ICAC is the stronger of the two bodies, and there's clearly room for improvement for both ICAC and IBAC. But the appetite for improvement, and by improvement I'm talking about an improvement to combating corruption, the appetite just doesn't seem to be all that high. And I can't help but agree with Robert Redlich as to a potential reason for that.
That the entire Labor and Coalition membership of the committee spoke with one voice without exception that exceptional circumstances should be there.
To stop public inquiries except in the most
exceptional circumstances, whereas The
everybody
Greens
else.
and the Independents all said no, it shouldn't. And one couldn't help but, of course, have an uneasy feeling that the reason that Labor and the Coalition took the position that they did was because they assume that one or other of them is likely to be in government at any moment of time, and it will be the members of Parliament from those parties that would then be exposed to public hearings.